Good evening. So glad you're here tonight for our board meeting, and some of you are wondering what in the world is that man doing, but I'm gonna call the meeting to order. And tonight, I'm here because we're having to elect our officers for this coming year. So that means these positions are open now, so there's no chairman at the moment. I'm acting until we have those elections. So at this time, Mrs. Wimberly, would you lead us in a moment of reflection?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pye. Good evening and welcome to all. I want to take a minute to share with you part of a devotion I read recently by Mark Dieterning. Silence is a valuable tool, especially for leaders in this tumultuous time we are in. Sheer silence and calm can provide valuable lessons to us all. It is extremely important to be comfortable with silence because when used properly, it can enable you to learn, to build relationships, and to build trust. For leaders, silence can be a source of acknowledgement, a presence of appreciation, the beginning of connecting with one another. Too often, leaders feel the need to fill the space with conversations, or they lead with ideas, as opposed to allowing for initial calm and curiosity to promote true learning. President Abraham Lincoln was a lifelong learner. He knew that you could not learn while you were talking. He valued silence and listening to help him better serve others. I will end with his words, which I still find relevant today. I am rather inclined to silence, and whether that be wise or not, it is at least more unusual nowadays to find a man who can hold his tongue than to find one who cannot. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Now will you please join us to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Before we get started with the election of officers, I'd like to have the approval of the agenda at this time. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
A second? Any concerns or discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor, raise your hand, please. That is 7-0 in favor of approving the agenda as it is. Okay, now we'll get on with the nomination. I'm going to ask for a nomination for the board chair.
Mr. Pye, I would like to nominate Gail Hughes. She has been a great chair through a lot of this COVID and other things, and I would like to see her continue if she so chooses. So that's my nomination.
And Mr. Mitchum seconds that. Any discussion? Not hearing any. The vote. Those in favor, raise your hand. 7-0 in favor of Ms. Hughes as the board chair. Do you want to do the vice chair and then turn it over to you? Yeah, I feel better. Now we'll do the vice chair. Do I have a nomination for vice chair? Ms. Wimberly, you up first.
Yes, thank you, sorry. I'd like to nominate Tanya Robinson, please.
Okay. And Mr. Mitchum said he seconds that. All right, any discussion? Not hearing any, let's take a vote. Of course, the majority vote determines who gets it, okay? All those in favor, raise your hand. I see 7-0, again unanimous for Tanya Robinson as vice chair. At this time, I'm gonna turn over to our board chair, and she will begin to conduct other business.
Thank y'all very much. I really appreciate the confidence and the opportunity to be able to serve you one more year for board chair, and I look forward to a great year this year. So Next thing on the agenda actually is board secretary appointment, and that appointment is made by the chair. But if I could, if everyone would be okay with it, I would really like to postpone that appointment until the next board meeting, simply because I just like to see what the interest is and just talk with some people and then kind of go from there. So if everybody is okay with that? Everybody okay? Okay. Then we will entertain that at the next board meeting. Okay, next on the agenda is our school highlights. And that's Miss Jennifer Passmore.
Good evening, Chairman Hughes, Board of Trustees, and Mr. Pye. It's not on? Has a green light?
Sounds like it to me, but you gotta get close to it.
Okay. January is South Carolina School Board Recognition Month. This year's theme is celebrating local leaders. Our board members have signed this ethical principles poster to pledge their efforts to improve public education in our community. It is also a DD2 tradition to honor our Board of Trustees with a book dedication by each school. These books will be on display in the lobby at the next board meeting. This celebration is supported at the highest level by Governor Henry McMaster. The following is the Governor's proclamation. Whereas education is the foundation upon which economic, intellectual, and social capital of our state is built, and whereas school boards directly influence instruction in South Carolina's public schools, and whereas the decisions of local school boards affect the present and future lives of children while setting the direction to prepare all students to be competitive in a local, state, national, and global 21st century knowledge economy. And whereas local school board members work with parents, businesses, education professionals, and other community members to represent their views and create the ideal education vision, their public schools and students. Whereas School Board Recognition Month highlights the unique role school boards play in representing their constituents by promoting and advocating for quality public education. Now therefore, I, Henry McMaster, Governor of the great state of South Carolina, do hereby proclaim January 2020 as School Board Recognition Month throughout the state and encourage all South Carolinians to recognize the contributions of local school boards to the academic success of public school students across the Palmetto State. Thank you for your dedication to quality education on behalf of our students, families, and staff of DD2.
Thank you, Ms. Passmore. Okay, next on our agenda is public comments on agenda items. And I do have one, and that would be Jason Brocker.
Good evening, newly re-elected Madam Chair, DD2 Board, Mr. Pye. Well, welcome to 2022. Unfortunately, I feel that I'm saying the same things that I said. Can you not hear me? Oh.
Yeah. there you
Better
go.
here? Oh, I actually hear the echo behind me just fine.
I
Okay.
hear you.
Well, anyway, good evening. This is now in 2022, and I have some other things that I'd like to speak about, but it's 3 months almost to the day since I last asked you to consider enacting some triggers and getting ready for the next wave. And obviously, here we are again, coming right back after another COVID workshop. So we're still in this. We haven't really made any headway. I've heard very specifically, and not that I actually disagree, that we do not want to go back to virtual. We do not want to go back to virtual. I know very few people that actively want to go back to virtual. But the reality of logistics is that we may end up at a point where we can no longer operate the district. We're currently at double the rates that we were when we came back from school and had to go to virtual during the Delta curve. We have more than twice the number of staff that are currently out. The numbers are still climbing. Yes, I do expect that they're going to drop shortly. If you look at the trends throughout the rest of the world, the Omicron peak is very high and comes down very quickly. So yes, I'm hopeful that it comes down quickly, but I still feel that we'd asked, the staff had asked, the parents had asked, had agreed overwhelmingly that given the circumstances that requiring face coverings made sense, and it didn't happen. And so here we are again. We have the CDC recommending that people would come back from isolation or quarantine in a shorter period of time, provided that they wear masks. So now it's going to get messy as to knowing who's supposed to wear a mask, who's not supposed to wear a mask. And it would be a whole lot easier on everybody if we just had local levels, whatever's going on in the school, however bad it is, we put on some masks. And when it gets better, we don't have to put on masks if we don't want to. It really doesn't have to be that difficult. So when it's recommended by the medical field, when it's asked for by the majority of your staff and your parents, it seems to make sense. I would really like you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brockert. Okay, now, next on the agenda, board members, in your packets, you should have received the minutes of the regular meeting of December 13th and the called meeting of January the 4th. I need a motion to approve that, please. Motion made by Mr. Farnsworth. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Crosby. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report, the state of the district. Mr. Pye.
As promised in an earlier meeting some time ago, we said that January and February would be 2 big months preparing for the opening of a new school that's well underway and definitely on schedule, but we're on a tight schedule to be able to have things ready to begin school in mid-August. And we're there, and I saw some pictures, 2 sources, the principal sent me some pictures, and they must have gotten a drone for the holidays season, a gift, and they use that, and they see it, and you see up here on the board the 4 current pictures that was just sent to me. Yeah, those are the ones I received this morning. So they're very current, but you can see the block going up. All the block in the building is pretty well up. There may be 1 layer, all block. You see in the bottom right picture, the brick is beginning to go around the building. And I think they're probably about 1/3 away or 1/4 of the way of that. That's going to take some time, but they're underway with that. And then you see where they put the roof on, the sections that are blue. Of course, the white one's completely finished, and that's the gym. No, that's the cafeteria. That's the cafeteria. The gym, they're erecting the steel. Supposedly, if not by the end of the week, next week, the steel will be going on the gym, which is in the left-hand picture on the right, the bottom right, the big opening. That is the gym. So well underway. The only one is you look from the aerial view in picture 2 across the way up at the upper right. You see the 3rd wing back there. The first one's already has a roof on it, just about finished. Then you've got the second one about 1/3 finished, and they're working on that and should have that done in another week or 2. And then you got the 3rd wing to go. They just got the block of it. It was the last one started, and they'll be putting that on that one. The construction company has told me that they feel like mid to end of February, they hope to have, certainly by the 1st of March, the roof and all on. And that way, they should be able to work during inclement weather. They've done a masterful job of working overtime, working late. They had yesterday 85 workers there. 85. They've been working through the holidays, not on Christmas Day, of course, but they worked the days before and after, and it may have been less than 85, but we've never had numbers like that working on a project, not this fast, not this good, and limited, at least from our perspective, limited things that maybe we have a concern with. Everything seems to be going fine. We have excellent architectural drawings that they're following. And of course, we follow everything from OSF, and they had to approve what we're doing. And this school plant has been built 3 or 4 times before in another district. And so the changes we've made is not structurally done anything. We just moved some things around, mainly on the inside. So we think that we've got a real winner in our design, the building schedule, and I feel real good about everything that's happened. The project manager is a very young fella, and he has urgency, but he also has a maturity and the charisma to work with our neighbors and all who are very antsy about noise and other issues that all of us would have as homeowners. And he's been able to try to balance that and also make sure we maintain a high profile on the work schedule to get things done. And that's a balancing act that a lot of veterans have a hard time doing, but I've been most impressed with this young man and how he's able to deal with people of all types. So that really is what we're doing tonight. We'll name the school, pick a name. Then we will also, in executive session, be naming the principal of the school, among other things. But that'll be done. And then personnel will begin their process of looking at the number. They're doing it really kind of now, and about how many teachers we might need to move based on the numbers. We can't finalize anything till the attendance area meetings are done, and we see what we have. We've spent a long time on the attendance areas, working with principals, district staff. We've massaged like we do every time. We come up with a prototype that we feel is not the official one, but it's 90 to 95% camera ready. But there could be some switches in neighborhoods and some other things based on the input that we get when we have the community meetings. So and we're moving, I think last count, a little less than 900 students. And we're affecting 4 middle schools to open up a new one. We're moving some students from Austin to Gregg, 1 neighborhood or 2 down to Oak Brook Middle. Oak Brook Middle has a large neighborhood going to Gregg, along with all the neighborhoods up and down the road that's already at Gregg. So we balanced a few things like that out. We're also looking at the feeder system to get to the high schools, and that has been a big plus. It's not going to be natural, but it's a little better than it was in the past. And so Gregg is probably the most affected going to the new school because the new school has the largest attendance area, as Gregg has always had the largest attendance area because of all that, those woods and places that we know neighborhoods are coming in the future. So we already have a situation that I'll be talking with the board about shortly. We are in a great need to be thinking about an elementary school down off of 65 as well as one up off of 17, somewhere in that area, both of those areas. So we're looking at 2 elementary schools now. There is, depending on how big you want your high schools to go, we're holding the kids, but eventually this bubble is moving to them. And so we're thinking that time needs to be spent on really seeing what's the possibility of a 4th high school. And that's usually very controversial and very expensive and calls for large acreage of land. And we're trying to look at that now. We're trying to work with these developers, not that we're pushing them, they're going to get here anyway. But if they want my blessing and encouragement of the district, then what can you do for us? So if you're willing to set aside land for an elementary school, a middle, and a high school, and we have at least one community who's offered to do all 3, and that would be wonderful. We had that in East Eddystone when they set aside land for Rollins School of the Arts and for Sand Hill. We were supposed to have a high school there, but that company sold their stuff to another company who didn't wish to go that route. So we lost that option. We were supposed to have 2 or 3 more elementary schools that were going to be paid for through a TIF model. But again, that was not finalized, so it did not make it with the new owners that took over. So we're back looking to make sure we have property. You all know we do have that section of property that we can build an elementary, middle, or maybe a K-8 school, whatever is most desirable, in the ponds, right inside the entrance that you go there to the right, right past the fire station and the Y. That area of property has been set aside. We have it for another 8 years that we have an option to put a school there. So that's some things I just wanted you to know that we have. Yes, ma'am.
Did you say that it's not an option anymore to put it at Sand Hill, the high school?
I mean, we don't have the free land anymore, but there's option, we'll have to buy the land. And there's
Okay.
plenty of land to buy land there, so, but we're looking at a site that might be within 2 miles of Rollins and Sand Hill, then that might be better.
And also, the area in the ponds, would that be big enough for a high school?
It was 40 acres. No, not for a high school, for an elementary and middle.
Yeah, it wasn't big enough for a high school.
Like we have the two verbose campuses, the two Oak Brooks and Eagle Nest and River Oaks. That type of thing. We have 2 schools sharing a cafeteria. We can do that. And Daniel Island, and Berkeley's doing it again for the second or third time, is building a K-8 school. I've always been interested in that model, but since I will not be here to organize that and to perhaps sell that's out there, but that'll be something that if we decide it's one of the options, it'll be definitely worthy of a discussion for y'all to see what direction you'd like for us to go. But there's plenty of time to choose to do that. We just
May I-
need to have property big enough.
Mr. Pye, if the 2 districts consolidate, as there's predicting it will be, will that alleviate, or we still will need that high school?
We're gonna need it because the growth is moving that way. And if they grow much more in District 4, they're not gonna have room for the students that we're going to them. But as it is now, people are living here, moving here, and working in District 4.
Where else would we have an option to build a high school? Do we have that many?
Been down 17 to give hands on both sides of the road are some possibilities we've looked at and we've talked to people about over the years. And of course, going up, that's 61, I guess, time you get to 61. 17, like you go into Cottageville, the left and right of that road, right past 61, could be a great potential site. But it needs to pull from this side, from Somerville High School and Ashley Ridge. Ashley Ridge is the school I'm worried about because Fort's pretty well grown out. That they can hold whatever they're gonna have down there, but Ashley Ridge, y'all there, I don't know how many of you, I travel 65 every day. The homecoming community is getting, they get put up 1,000 houses. They already have 25 up now.
Is there anywhere out beyond, or wouldn't that not be feasible to go out beyond Ashley Ridge towards?
You could go there too, there's
right?
possibility, yes. Now,
But it
that's
would
where the neighborhoods are going, all up down that road. Watson Hill on the corner, down to the end, and so, but it might be easier to bus those children, just thinking, from Ravenel and Clubhouse up the road there, and then on the back side, give hands and all that area, and DeBose, some of those areas out there, Knightsville, that then could be the new school in the future, just saying to cover those growing areas.
What about going towards St. George?
Up Jedburgh, yeah, that could do it.
There's a lot of homes being
The thing is that growth though is going, Ashley Ridge takes what they need to have to maintain all those new neighborhoods. They're not gonna get much past where Rollins and Sand Hill is, as well as 17 where the ponds, all that won't be able to go. In other words, we'll have to go to a new high school outside of that. There's just no room for them. And Summerhill is back at max, and they could still hold a few more. They've done a good job with space there. We don't have teachers sharing rooms, to my knowledge. If it is, it's some unique situation. Everybody has their own
But we don't have any
classroom.
more free land, do we? We don't have any more free land,
So
except
that's
the
what I'm
ponds.
saying, no more except what we have at the ponds. And if we deal with a developer, if they want any blessing from me about, not stopping them, because I put in letters to them when they meet with us, because I tell them that, as the county council has asked us to do, that we will welcome whomever comes, we'll work with them, but right now, our schools are crowded. We do not have room for the children. I want to make sure they understand that, and county council gets a copy of the letter, so they know I've put them on notice. Y'all better not approve them because we don't have a place for them. So if they want to do something, they need to come up with some property to say, if we could have our neighborhood, we will provide property for schools.
Mr. Pye, wasn't there some land for a high school that was supposedly also set aside over in the Sandhill track, over on the back side of that Sandhill track?
By the industrial park. That was it,
Yes.
but that's never was finalized.
It's never materialized.
And so the new company doesn't recognize that,
Got it. Okay.
to my knowledge. So is that right? I see the attorney, because we've been around with this, but I'm feeling better about it. If you'd asked me this 6 months ago, I told you it was pitiful. I didn't see the light of the day. I could tell you where we needed schools, but the chance of getting anything slim to none. But it should be a requirement for these large neighborhoods who have 3,000 homes in them. It should just be, how are you going to help with what we're doing with fire, EMS, schools? They need to be thinking about that. Maybe another fitness
Part of
center.
infrastructure.
Or just part of the infrastructure. If they want to encourage people to move out towards Ridgeville and St. George, they're going to have to provide the services.
Agree.
And of course, we have property to build an elementary school in Bridlewood, which is right out from Give Hands, headed over to Ridgeville. So there's a possibility we have that site. All right, so that's my my thing is now that everything's gun-ho on this new school, and as soon as we finalize, every time we finalize something, we're getting ready to be able to finalize how we're going to staff it, how many, those kinds of things, and then they will begin letting teachers know who have points so they can volunteer. Say if DuBose loses 15 teachers, well, if they got 7 leaving, then it's only 8 teachers have to come to the new school. The 7 openings will go to the new school. So, in other words, we're trying to staff the new school, but we're not going to just open it up and everybody can go who wants to go and take from the existing schools. That would ruin all of our campuses. So we've got to keep a cadre of teachers there. And right now, we've never had a problem with that, with too much. I've had to, once or twice, a new principal during my time, I've had to say, hold it for a minute. You've already taken 15 teachers from the school. I think that's enough. Because if I put you, especially if it was their former school, I know they want to work with you, what would you think of all of a sudden now? You woke up tomorrow morning, we said, we're going to put you back at your school, minus your 15 teachers you gave away. So we had to make them think it's fair. A new principal doesn't get to pick anyone except any opening that they have. They inherit those teachers. But we're going to ask the new principal to sit down with the teachers as they're thinking before they decide, and talk about expectations, what's the vision for this new school. And so people need to understand it's not going to be an easy job, but necessarily it shouldn't be a bad one. It gives them a chance to, do you want to be a part of this new vision? Do you want to be a part of all this? It's going to take work. But at the end of the day, is this what you've been looking for? Because it's not often we can open a new school, and we want to do it right. We've been blessed in the past when we've opened all of our new schools, all of them. We think we've done a good job of them. So being many years, we've had to open like 5 at one time. And opening just one, I think it's going to allow us to be a little bit more careful. And I feel good about that. Any questions about the new schools, and principals, and all that? We're moving right ahead. We'll be naming the assistants as soon as we get the principal. Next thing is to decide on how many students we have. If it's, they may only qualify for 2 to begin with and move up to 3 or 4, and we'll start with that number, and we'll go ahead and try to select them right away, and so that the teachers know who they're going to be working for, who's the team leading that school. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Pye. Next on your agenda, board members, is you should have received in your packets the recommendations and resignations for the 21-22 school year. Does anyone have a problem with doing that in open session? Okay, I need a motion to approve those. Motion made by Ms. Wimberly. Do you have a second? Second by Mr. Farnsworth. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Okay, we're going to move on to new business. First on the new business agenda is naming of the new middle school. Mr. Pye, will you be handling that one?
I might as well. Okay, and I've not seen any of the results, so I have no idea what the list looks like, and I apologize for that because I'm a nosy busybody, and I cannot believe I have not seen that and began to do some kind of lobby, and now that I'm on my way out, I think I can I'm gonna speak my piece on it, but I didn't get to see it, so you and I, we're gonna see it the first time, so, do you have that with you? If you come up and got us, is it something we're gonna show on the screen?
No, sir.
No, you've got handouts for anybody?
In the board packets,
Okay, you
They
have.
had a
Oh, so
report.
you have already seen them? Shucks, I am left out.
Dorchester School District 2 invited the community to get involved and to submit name suggestions for our 7th middle school in the Beach Hill area. We conducted a campaign October 12th through November the 19th to collect name suggestions from students, families, staff, and the community. In the board packet, you should have received a report that details 1,727 name suggestions that were received. 3 name suggestions that received the most votes were Freeman Middle School, Beach Hill Middle School, and William L. Penn Senior Middle School. We are grateful to the community for their enthusiastic participation in this campaign.
I think we have to vote on the name. We have to, she gave us the top 3.
That's all we need to know.
Yes, sir.
Who's the top 3 vote getters?
You want me to repeat those?
I know when we named Ashley Ridge, I don't think Ashley Ridge was the top 3. We had a sort of discussion, and that's what led to Ashley Ridge. We call it something else. I forgot, Ashley Plantation, and we decided, no, we're not going down that road. So we had several things we changed it on the spot. And that's the board's prerogative. You're naming the school. We just gave you this as some input. You don't have to pick the highest vote getter. You don't have to pick any of the top 3. If you feel there's something else that you think would better benefit the school district.
I would just like to say some of my other favorites, if you guys haven't looked through that list. I did like Chucktown Middle.
Chucktown?
That's a good one. Schooly McSchoolface. That's another good one. Of course, I'm joking on those other 2.
I hope so.
I hope everybody knows that. Just to give you guys the numbers there, the breakdown, so those top 3, I ran it here while we were waiting. Freeman Middle School was 471 versions of that. Beach Hill Middle School, 358 versions. And then Penn was 238. So, Freeman, Beach Hill, and Penn. Can you, Mr. Pye, would you, and I know Freeman, I know Ms. Freeman and that story. Can you give us a little bit of background just on Ms. Freeman as well as Mr. Penn? I think, was that a coach? He was a coach in the district?
Somerville High School. He's been retired for maybe 7, 8, 10, maybe 10, at least 10 years, 12 years. He used to sub for us, but he's stopped doing that now. He's getting up there in age. But Mr. Penn was an assistant principal in the district.
And then Ms. Freeman, I think, her connection is actually at Beach Hill, at the Beach Hill area. Is that correct?
No. Her daughter-in-law, I think, was a teacher. Was it Ashley Ridge? Part-time. Miss Freeman was a longtime teacher for me at Flowertown, and she retired. I don't think she worked anywhere else, did she? At Knightsville when she first started teaching, but then she moved to Flowertown. So, yeah, she was a therapist. So she might have served several schools.
At Beach Hill. She was a therapist at Beach Hill Elementary
as a
School.
therapist. They were in a bad, tragic accident. Mother and Mary Freeman and her daughter-in-law. And the son was in the car too, I think, yes.
Yeah.
It's three of them.
That just happened a few years ago. Yeah,
Really like a year ago since we've been doing this pandemic, because a lot of us couldn't go to the funeral.
yeah.
Can I ask, could people vote more than once?
Yeah, there's no way
So
to
you could have
control it.
somebody that voted 50
Yes,
times?
yes.
Okay.
And then there could have been, you know, students, the whole student body could have voted. Sand Hill, Beach Hill could have said, we want all our students to vote, and all of them voted. But that's a big thing, and it's important, but where another elementary school didn't do that. So we just left it as what it was. We just really wanted you to have some valid names to look at and what you think is the best choice. And there's usually a discussion about how we do this. The only place I know of the teacher, the school's named after, well, she went on to be, it was Austin Bailey, but they were both principals. They were at least principals. And then there's been no assistant principals that districts had a school named after, but all this could be a first. That's your option. I was just letting you know the background, the history of it.
So according to, someone put this in there, correct me if this is wrong, but it's Meredith and Andrea Freeman.
Right.
Both educators in DD2. I think one of, Andrea was an OT
Right.
with about 50 years combined experience.
Mary retired with probably 40 years' experience, and she was a long-time first grade teacher most of her career.
She was at Newington, was she not?
She might have been at Union for a short period of time. We had to trade those first grade teachers around with the fifth grade teachers when the schools went K-5. I'm not sure she was in that mix or not, but she was with me my whole 12 years. I hired her there from Knightsville.
Can you tell me, because it's been a long while, and I apologize to the Beach Hill principal, how did Beach Hill get its name?
The road is supposedly, that's what I was told, the road is to the beach, Beach Hill, but it's spelled beach as in the name beach and not beach in a beach.
Right.
But it was the road to the beach. I guess 61 took them to Folly Beach, which was probably the beach, closest beach outside of Eddystone, which probably nobody knew about. John Gregg was he was a longtime principal, wasn't he? I know he was very active in the African-American community prior to integration, and Mr. Reeves and those talked about him being the transitional person, the person that made it work so beautifully. And we probably had one of the best transitions of any district in the country when we did that, because we had people like him who were community leaders who said this is the right thing, and he gave his advice on how to make it better, and they listened to him. So that's how Greg got that name.
Mr. Pye, what does that do, so timeline-wise? Obviously, I understand we're trying to make this name and create this name as soon as we can, because there's a lot of other stuff that has to happen there. If we take this, now that we know these top three names, now that we've narrowed it down a little bit, if we came back at, say, the next board meeting, would that be acceptable?
Yeah, we're fine with it. There's no rush. I mean, it's just so we have it done by mid-February, so we got a board meeting in January, one more.
Okay. I don't know the pleasure of the board on that. I just, now that we know those top
All
three
right.
names, maybe we can take that back and just, really dig in and do some research.
Again, I'm
and see.
reminding you, if you're still not happy with that or you see something else, it's any board member's liberty to add one other one to the list or whatever. The list could be 10, and then you decide on which is the best one if you don't feel those ring that. I do know that on every one of these, we talked about the names, but on like Beach Hill Middle School, which would be a very obvious name, we've had a lot of issues when you had like Oakbrook Middle and Oakbrook Elementary. The mail for years was a problem at those schools because they sounded so much alike, and people really got them mixed up. Of course, the two buildings look so much alike, and they're right there together, but this is totally different building concept. So and Beach Hill Elementary's been there a long time. They're not opening together, so it's easier to maybe give them a definition. So I just thought I'd give you a little bit of history.
You know, I kind of like the way when we named the schools Sandridge and that kind of thing. I kind of like that process that we used when we did that, because we actually had community members, because it's a community school. And we actually had community members come in and tell us why they thought these names were, just give us a background. And, so I kind of like that idea, because I don't know these people. I mean, I know Mary Freeman, I know her, and, you know, a few of the others, I know Mr. Penn, Mr. Penn was a teacher when I was in school. So, I mean, I know him, but, I mean, just to give us some kind of a background or some kind of a history as to why they feel these are the names that, you know, that we should be choosing from, as opposed to us just seeing these names and say, oh, that sounds good, let's call it that. You know, we have something that's relevant to the area and that will be fitting and won't be able to be confused with Beach Hill Elementary and that kind of thing. So, I mean, I don't know. How do y'all feel about that? Maybe we can,
It kind of changed our mind.
I think it did too, because we learned about the history of the, of,
Austin Bailey, that was
yeah.
very helpful.
That was a mixture of several things you put together. That's what I said, and that's what we've done. Everything y'all have said has been done, one time or the other.
So, I mean, what are the I mean, I guess which direction do we want to head? I mean, do we want to just look at these names and just throw a dart at it and choose one? I mean, obviously not. This is something that's really important. So do we want to maybe bring some of the community in and just have them tell us some history about why they feel these names are important?
Somerville High School. And see, these schools are gonna be served, most of them by Ashley Ridge. Ashley Ridge and,
Beach Hill
Flowertown and probably Beach Hill.
Flowertown, Newington.
Yeah.
I just think something that's important, because this is a name that will be forever.
Forever.
It couldn't hurt, rather than knee jerk and go, okay, they got the most votes, because obviously people could vote 50 times. If we did have some people come, it helped us with
Community
Austin
input.
Bailey, if you recall, when we were naming it, because they came in and explained things, and it really,
Good.
we could. That's just my 2 cents worth. It couldn't
I mean, why
hurt.
couldn't they come, that's what they did before. Why couldn't they come to the next board meeting and tell us why they feel these are, you know, names that we should be choosing?
Some of them are, you know,
Way out there.
they're way out there. They don't matter. Is that on there?
Justin's is on there, yeah. Barbara's on there.
Could we
Oh, my
look at a
goodness.
workshop maybe possibly prior to our next board meeting, to look at this
I think that's what we
specifically?
have to do so that we don't do it within the board meeting. We do it in a naming the school workshop. That's what we did. We had a workshop. And then we talked about it, and then in the board meeting, we actually did the voting on which one we would choose or
And so
whatever.
if we could just, in our workshop, we can add public comment in there and then put out to the district community if they're really passionate about a certain name or for whatever reason to go with that, for them to come to that workshop.
And not necessarily these top three, just a name in general. You know, because like you said, you could have had one person that voted every one of these times. You can vote as many times as you want. Vote as many times as you want. So that's why you can't take this.
Three of them on here, at least three of them I recognize as location ones too, and that's Beach Hill Road, which is probably got Beach Hill. You got Westo, which was the Indian name or whatever was there many years ago. That was, when I came here, that was one of them, Wasmasaw. And then also, there was one more. Yeah, that'd be hard for kids to spell, so. There's several assistant principals. William Penn's not the only one.
on your
Also, Natasha Prosser's father's on here,
drive.
Mr. Green. He was quite a administrator too, Timmy Green. So there's a lot of stuff. And Tommy Henry, he's the young man that remembered that passed away at Newington. We have individuals like that.
Okay, so is everybody okay with doing a workshop, and can we get it out, I guess, through public information or whatever, just saying if they have a name that they're passionate about, whether, you know, it be area-specific or whatever that, you know, they come and present to us at the workshop? Is that what everybody's thinking?
And again, I hate to beat the dead horse. I just want to make absolutely sure. So on this particular survey that went out, an individual could have voted multiple times.
Multiple times, yes, sir. That's obvious.
Because I can already see the people that are going to come at us and say, well, you knew what the top vote getter was. Why didn't you just vote
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, that's not the case.
Not quite that easy. I'm looking at the camera now. It's
Yeah.
not quite that easy. So we have to make sure and go through this process and get all the information.
These are just ideas for you. It's not a popularity thing because there's no way, 800 people certainly doesn't represent the 125,000 living in Dorchester too. So there are a lot of things you can look at. So you're not married to it because I don't know any board that, since I've been here, that's chosen a name based on popular vote.
Well, and then also remember, even if when they come in for the workshop, that is basically for information purposes only, so that you can understand what the passion is and what, you know, what the background is of the reason why they put those names on there. That does not necessarily mean that that's a name that's going to be chosen, but that does help you or help us in the decision-making. So we just need to remember that as well. So, okay, so are we, let's go ahead and do that while we're on this topic so we don't forget about it. A workshop before the next board meeting. Do we want to do 4:30 workshop? Is that a good time for everybody? 5 o'clock? 5 o'clock workshop? 5 o'clock workshop before the next board meeting, before the next board meeting.
45 minutes will be enough? Okay. You think that's enough time? Okay.
Okay, 5 o'clock before the next board meeting, which is going to be, what is the date on that? I don't have mine. 24th? Okay, the 24th at 5 o'clock for a workshop on the naming of the school. Okay, so let's move on.
All right, we are, the attendance
Attendance
area
lines.
line being what it is, and we're probably as close as we're gonna get. Now we're looking to make sure we get input and find out where there might be major concerns, like traffic problems or something that maybe individual families or neighborhoods experience that we just fully are not aware of, even though we had people from that area sit with us. So we want to keep that open, as nothing's etched in stone. So we right now want to set 2 definite community meetings and possibly a 3rd meeting if it needs to be. Because if we get some changes that we feel that are good changes, well, then we need to incorporate them so it could change what we present. And everybody in every neighborhood, it's not just for your neighborhood, it's for anything about this school. If you missed it the first time, you got the second time. If we have a 3rd one, which we probably will, it will be that 3rd meeting to see the final one. Board members, I encourage you, as we've done in the past, to attend at least one of those. And it's probably good to attend at least the first 2 because that's where you'll get any real concerns that we brought to you, as well as so you can see if you hear more than one time from different people, and also suggestions, because that's what we ask people. Don't just come up with a concern. You have to give us some type of suggestion. You just can't move 300 kids from this school and put them in this school because that's where you'd like your child to go to school, because that will overload that school and severely underdo a school that has probably the capacity to handle it. So we've got to make sure this is something we can grow with. So with that in mind, the first meeting we've got for the new middle school attendance lines, Tuesday, January 25th, 6 p.m. at Gregg Middle School. And then Monday, January 31st, the next week, at 6 p.m., Oak Brook Middle School. That's one on each end of the area where the 4 middle schools that are. Rawlings Middle School of the Arts is a district-wide school, so we don't pull from there. And River Oaks was just fine. They fit the rubrics of what we're trying to do as good as we can. They're landlocked, so it's not a whole lot we can do. All right, that's the meetings. And the 3rd meeting, if needed, will be Monday, February the 7th. If we need that, we'll announce that later. We don't want to put it out now, but I don't want people holding out for that meeting and miss the first 2, and there's not a 3rd meeting. It'll be based on what kind of input we have and what, if any, changes we need to make so we can update it to the public.
And I know you talked about this a little bit earlier, but just to clarify, will there be any changes to the high school? I know you mentioned feeder, but no.
I know that was a real issue with Miss Karen and also some others, but that was a low priority area for us. We looked at it only in the end to see if that brown frame would look better than a black frame or a blue frame. It just to see if we could push it in there, but that was not something we built the areas around because we had too many other issues we had to do to, really was based on capacity of the school and where the growth is coming in the next few years to make sure we can handle that before you get another school out of the ground.
Right, but I just meant so this new school will feed into both Ashley Ridge and Somerville.
Probably, yes. There'll be some going to both. Probably more to Ashley Ridge than, say, Greg was. Greg was really the best.
But you're not attempting to try to make it so
No,
that it
we tried, we looked at it. We'd have to change everything, and then we got a real mess. We did look at it, but it didn't fit. All right. And then we will bring the final attendance lines will be brought to the board on Monday, February the 14th. And I say, if you've been there, we'll give you a synopsis or summary how it went, what changes, and we'll go through the final rendition that night in case you did miss things or not sure what we finally ended up with. We will make that very clear that night, and then we'd ask for your support so we can immediately begin with the teachers. And we'll be ready to go. So once that's announced, we can then determine how many teachers we're taking from each school based on the neighborhoods that are leaving those schools. Okay? All right, thank y'all for listening to that.
Anybody have any questions before we move on, or comments? Okay, we're going to move on then to unfinished business. And first under unfinished business is the contract for superintendent search. The board met in a called board meeting on January the 4th via Zoom with a company that we voted to contract with at our last board meeting, South Carolina School Boards Association. We voted to have them to conduct our search. So in reviewing the contract and trying to get the contract basically curtailed to Dorchester 2 and its needs and what we were expecting and wanting out of the contract, we had a Zoom called meeting to go over that contract and basically just make sure it was exactly what we wanted. We added some stuff, we changed some stuff, and so now we need to vote on the finished contract, which board members have been sent that contract in their email from South Carolina School Boards Association. And so we need to vote to accept that contract as written, and we will begin as early as tomorrow morning with things beginning to happen. So you will see publications starting to come out on Tuesday morning from what SCSBA is telling us will occur. So, and the first thing out will begin with a survey, and the survey will basically go through the Dorchester District 2 website, working with personnel at Dorchester District 2, asking questions such as, what is it that you think this community is looking for in a new superintendent? What are some of the qualifications that you see are necessary? How do you think that relates to what we're looking for? So those are the kind of things that will happen, and that should go out as early as tomorrow. So anyway, I guess at this point, what we need to do, board members, is we need to vote to accept the contract as written. Okay, I have a motion from Ms. Wimberly. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Farnsworth. Any discussion, comments?
No, I do just want to reiterate to folks, there will be times and appropriate places for community input. You know, of course, as a board, one of our sole responsibilities is to, in the unfortunate need that we have to find a superintendent, which we found ourselves in that place, that we go out and find that superintendent. So it is our search, but we certainly want community input on the qualities, you know, what does the community feel that we as a board need to look for in our next superintendent? So there will be plenty of opportunities, so please keep your ears to the ground for that, for those opportunities. And I'm excited. The proposal we've got in front of us as far as the search firm goes, it's a very, very in-depth proposal. You know, I do a lot of hiring outside of the board, and so I've seen that, the way that process works. And I would tell you, the School Board Association, that the process that they've got in place is very, very in-depth. And I have no doubt we're going to get people from all over the state. I think we're going to get people from all over the country, super, super, super highly qualified people. We will never be able to fill the shoes of Mr. Pye. That's never going to happen. I don't think any of us would ever say that's going to happen. But I do think with the resources we're putting out, we are going to find extremely highly qualified candidates. So I'm excited to see that progress and move forward.
Yeah, I want to add just a little bit to that, Justin, and just a reminder that while this process is occurring, everything is confidential. So there'll be no publications that'll be put out. There'll be no names that'll be mentioned. Nothing will you will see on the outside other than possibly the things such as the surveys coming out for the input portion of it. But when we start getting candidates involved, none of that will be communicated until we reach our finals or well, even at the semifinal level, it's still confidential. So nothing will be communicated at that point. Until we reach the final level, then it will become public, the names and that sort of thing. So at that point, we will have community meet and greets so that you're able to come out and meet the top 3, top 5, however many we end up choosing, and that's going to be based on the number of applicants that we end up having. So you will have meet and greet times so that you're able to come out and meet and greet them and just get to know them a little bit. And then after that is when we as a board will then go in and choose out of the ones that are there for the meet and greet and make that decision. And hopefully we'll be able to bring in someone who will somewhat be able to walk in a little bit of these shoes next to me, but knowing that's not going to be something that's going to happen completely. There's no way we can do that, but we're going to try. So, and we're taking this very, very seriously, and we're making sure that we look and take every effort to make sure that there's as much involvement community-wise, teachers, staff. We want everybody involved as far as the input is concerned and that kind of thing. So just wanted to put that out there. So does anybody else have any other comments or anything on that? Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Did we vote on it? We did vote on it. Keep me straight, guys. Okay. And then next on the agenda, we did not vote on that. Okay. So I'm telling you, it's too much going on. All right. So now we have a motion and second. We've had our discussion. All in favor? 7-0. Okay. Now we got it right. Okay, next is our workshop briefing. Mr. Pye?
Ms. Santa Maria, would you like to just give us a quick recap of what basically, I guess, that we're looking at trying to do? And the verdict's still not out, but we'll take the input from the board, and I'm sure they'll be giving me more input in the next few days. I've already scheduled a principals meeting tomorrow with all 25 on Teams, and we will be taking each of these things we talked about tonight and get their full input. And my question is going to be, if we don't do this, then what are we going to do? I want solutions. And so the people who do it are the principals, and I think we need to keep the board abreast of the fact that these are things they say they can or cannot do. I'm hopeful that we'll get some input from teachers too before finalizing, because every time the principals have made a decision, oftentimes 2 days later, teachers are calling, saying, or emailing me, nobody asked me. And remember, the principals are digging the holes, but it's the teachers who's in the hole. So I thought I would make sure y'all understand that, remember that. And I don't have a dog in the fight, and I don't think any of my team does, but we have our strong opinions. But the closer you get to it, our job is to tell the big picture of what we have to do and what is negotiable, and then see where we feel the best thing lies. It may be a little bit different approach for one grade level over another, but unfortunately with something like this, with shared families, sharing kids among the grade levels in schools, we need to be united on what we're asking parents to do. And if we're going to ask for something, I'm going to tell you now, we should be able to enforce it. If we're not going to be able to enforce it, then I'm telling you, it looks bad to teach children that we have rules that you don't have to follow. I'm sorry, but it doesn't look good. So if we're going to have a rule, then we're going to have to make it work. That's kind of where I look at it. I hope board members, I didn't scare you away with that comment, but we just have to really look at this. This is not earth-shattering because, you know, we're famous for seeing something a little bit different. And of course, we're still married to these numbers. Who knows, this time next month, we could see a sharp drop, and that's been predicted by some people. And so that could really alter what we're doing, and the other, vice versa. We could see a spike upward, and we may have to back up and punt to really make sure we're ensuring the best safety measures we can for our teachers, our staff, and our children, and in line with what's right for our community. And that's going to be a tall order because it's oftentimes the stars are not aligned, but we'll do what we can. Thank you. So go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you. So during our workshop, we reviewed some of our current disease activity level, both in the community and in the district. We talked about all of the changes that came out recently from DHEC, the required changes to isolation timelines, as well as vaccination status for individuals wishing to be cleared from quarantine. And then we talked about some options that we have ahead of us and next steps. Those include options for potential reduced quarantine, as well as a change to our current staff quarantine from a 7-day to a 5-day, as well as our recommendation that we continue a 10-day quarantine for students. We also talked about an option for class closures and a change to that threshold from 30% to 20%. I think that's it. I think we captured all of it.
My goodness, that was a long workshop for that, but it worked out pretty good. So that's basically the line. Are any questions from any of the board members? Because every time you hear it, you think of something.
As far as some of the options we discussed, are any of those options that you need board action per se to take action on? Or is that something if everybody meets tomorrow and you say, hey, we're maybe, and I don't know, but we're comfortable going from the 10-day to the 5-day quarantine period. Is that something that you can do, Mr. Pine?
That probably is the main issue, so you're right. But then if that's the consensus, I owe it to tell all board members that after hearing from the principals and hopefully from their teachers, then we still feel this is the best option. And if not, that it seems to be consensus that we do this, and this is how we plan to make that work. And I want you to weigh in on anything you're thinking. And when you get that, to let me know, gosh, this is terrible, or I like this better, or whatever.
Okay. And I guess what I'm getting at, I just don't know, is that something where you're able to take action and then let us know, or you would like us to come back
We
together?
could, and I think based on history, we've all agreed that maybe if we do this together and don't leave you out of the planning loop and all, that it can be done, and we don't have to vote every time. Because when you vote for something and you change it, you got to vote another way, and that means we could be voting at every meeting, and that's very disruptive to teachers and people as they're trying to plan. So, and the public thinks we're wishy-washy with that, which I would think the same thing. So I think if you just continue to trust us, I'll let you know. And if it's divided, I'm going to tell you it's in your court. Lobby it back to me any way you want. We'll do what you say.
Well, am I wrong in stating, though, that the majority of what the discussion that we had was all basically mandates that were mandated by the state because it is DHEC and CDC guidelines that have to be followed?
Yes, correct. All of the new isolation requirements, as well as the new criteria for vaccination status, are requirements that we don't have a choice in following.
So those are things we would not have to vote on anyway. So
It's just two things. It's the one about the quarantine days and about the number of students in the classroom.
Yes, and
That's
I
the
think
only two.
percentage.
Our plan would be to continue those discussions with principals tomorrow, and decide if we are going to continue with our recommendation for 10 days, and if not, what the plan would be for rolling out a shortened option, if that's feasible and when. And then obviously we would notify the board of what that decision was so you could weigh in.
Yeah, and if we need to, if we need to, because of an emergency situation, if we need, is something that we need to vote on, obviously, we can do a called meeting if we have to do that to make that happen. So I think we're okay with that. Okay. Moving on. Next on the agenda are public comments. And the first up, I have Mary Rita Watson.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You all know me. I am Mary Rita Watson. I am a teacher at Oak Brook Elementary School. I teach Read 180 to 4th and 5th graders, and I love my job. I am also the president of the Somerville Education Association, and we're an affiliate of the SCEA. And I am a big advocate for public schools. So I am here today to just bring awareness to those of us in the room and those of us at home that our public schools are being threatened by some special interest groups and legislators who want to give public dollars to private schools. And the discussion around this issue is going to be taking place in Columbia on Wednesday at 10 a.m. And of course, the public school employees will all be working then. So we have strong opinions about this, but we're going to be busy. So other advocates for public schools who have the time and the passion are being asked to go and testify, voice their opinion on the fact that giving these public dollars to private schools fails the majority of our children. Until our state government can equitably fund public schools, they have no business giving public tax dollars to private schools. Most of our community members and even our own DD2 employees might not be aware of the fact that our school district is one of the lowest funded districts in the state of South Carolina. We cannot continue to provide the world-class education or anything close to it if the limited funds that we currently receive are reduced. So what do we need to do? We need to contact Senator Sean Bennett, our local senator. He has signed on to this bill in support of it. You can contact him by going to the website www.statehouse.gov. It takes you to their homepage. You can search his name, and on there it's got contact information. So you can email him, you can call him, it has phone numbers on there. You can mail him, but that wouldn't work by Wednesday. Also, to delay the vote, I mean, the Republican group has plenty of votes to pass this. And so our only option right now is to delay this for a little while until we can kind of convince people otherwise. And so if they can get 30 people to speak for 3 minutes tomorrow each, then that would take the time that they would normally have, and they would have to delay the vote. And that would give us a little more time to maybe convince some people otherwise. So consider either riding or driving on up there and voicing your concerns over giving those public dollars to private schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Rita. Next up is Ken Greenstreet.
Good evening. July 3rd, 2021, the President of the United States stated, quote, "I defy you to tell me what constitutes an American. You can't do it." My son just finished a U.S. government class. He did not read the Constitution for word for word. He will finish 12 years of South Carolina schooling, having never read the entire Constitution. How is one expected to take an oath of allegiance to something they have never read? Communist goal number 29, discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs. A South Carolina congressman last week proclaimed that elections should not be left up to the states. He argued that Congress needs to mature with the times and make changes where necessary, To me, this is an incredibly scary idea. Communist goal number 30, discredit the American fathers. Let me tell you of one of the founding fathers. Quoting from the book I gave you, The Making of America, quote, Thomas Jefferson had begun the study of Latin, Greek, and French at the age of 9. At the age of 16, he had entered the College of William and Mary at Williamsburg as an advanced student. At the age of 19, he had graduated and immediately commenced 5 years of intensive study with George Wythe, the first professor of law in America. During this period, he often studied 12 to 14 hours per day. By the time Jefferson had reached early adulthood, he had gained proficiency in 5 languages. He had studied the Greek and Roman classics. He had studied European and English history. He had carefully studied both the Old and New Testament. While studying the history of ancient Israel, Jefferson made a significant discovery. He saw that at one time, the Israelites had practiced the earliest and most efficient form of a representative government. As long as the Israelites followed their fixed pattern of constitutional principles, they flourished. When they drifted from it, disaster overtook them, quote, close quote. Jefferson might not have known about spaceflight, but he was very well read on the human race and governments. The last week of the third quarter after Christmas break ended last week was not a time well used. My kids either sat in class and did minimal work, stared at the walls, or watched useless movies. We can do better, but first we have to get out of the babysitting mindset that afflicts most of American schools. The Minneapolis mayor recently stated that schools should stay open to combat a violent crime and carjacking surge. Think about that. The answer to our problems is the American home, which requires parents to be parents. But that is a different issue for another day. Finally, thank you for serving. If you can't tell, I'm a patriotic person. I spent 21 and a half years of my life wearing a flag on my left shoulder. I 100% agree with Thomas Jefferson and what he discovered in his studies of the Bible. If we don't hold close to our founding principles, we will quickly balkanize along various lines and disaster will follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenstreet. Okay, next on the agenda is an executive session. I need a motion to go in executive session for personnel matters related to hires.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Guthrie. Do I have a second? By Ms. Crosby. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0, and we will be returning after the executive session for any action required. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Okay, I need a motion to go into open session. Motion made by Ms. Crosby. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Guthrie. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Okay, do I have any motions out of executive session?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the personal recommendations as presented by Mr. Pai in executive session.
Okay.
I will add the word in there, the updated personnel recommendation as made by Mr. Pai in executive session.
Okay, I have a motion to accept the updated personnel recommendations made by Mr. Pai in executive session. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Robinson. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0, and I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mr. Guthrie. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Wimberly. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Good night, everybody.